Hello, my name is Ronnie Fisher. I'm with Tarleton State University in the Research Psychology class this semester. I want to talk to you a little bit today about religion and religious affiliation in the relationship to an individual's sense of self. Right now, we can find lots of research regarding self-compassion and its relationship to mental health. And self-compassion itself is a three-faceted system. It has to do with being mindful of our own feelings and our own thoughts. It's also got to do with being aware of trials that we might be going through, what our body is facing, what our mind is facing, and also being kind to ourselves or considerate to ourselves when we are in the middle of suffering. A lot of the research that you'll find regarding self-compassion has to do with some sort of racism or body dissatisfaction, physical or mental disorders like anxiety and depression, and how they relate to our self-compassion. Also, we'll find a lot of research regarding church and religious intervention in things such as racism or issues that are controversial. Right now, Graham and Romer in 2012, they did a research study on racism and the perception of racism by a group of Black individuals who were deeply rooted into their Black home church. What they consider to be a church family was used as a support system for them. And when faced with a racist experience, this group of individuals found themselves less hurt, less threatened, and less weakened by the overall racist experience than those who don't necessarily have a similar support system or this church involvement. What we also see is that with some individuals who just have anxiety problems or have a lack of family unit, they find those things in church. And there are some supporting research recently about people and their involvement in church increasing their social experiences, increasing their economic status because they have access to resources they wouldn't normally have if they kept within their own family unit. Additionally, it increases their ability to discuss political topics or to become involved with local political experiences. Also, we've seen a better quality of life, more overall civic duty appealing itself to individuals who are involved in church organizations who deal with these sorts of things on a daily basis at their church. What we are not seeing is a correlation between self-compassion and time spent in church. The problem here is that church is also known to have some negative qualities. For example, when we find ourselves in the midst of controversial issues such as LGBTQ, racism, political issues such as abortion, you'll find church members on either sides of the spectrum. And several people have reported that the reason that they do or do not attend church is because of the way that they were treated by a church-going individual. So what we hypothesize is that the amount of time that you spend in church will impact the way that you are compassionate toward yourself in this time of suffering. So the way we looked at this is we pulled in 63 people into our sample. They were people that went to Tarleton State University or people who attended a small local church in my area. And what we did was we used a Google Forms confidential submission online. We didn't obtain any identifying information. There were some demographics obtained, but not used for our purposes as far as the data analysis. So what we did was we gave these individuals a question: how much time do they spend in church weekly, on a bracket of 0 to 1, 2 to 4, 5 to 7, and 8 or more. Then each of them completed a 12-question self-compassion scale short form questionnaire. These questions could be answered on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being almost never, and 5 being almost always. At the completion of this survey, we were able to total their scores. Their score, if between a 0 and a 2.5, is considered to be low self-compassion. 2.5 to 3.5, then a moderate level, and then, of course, the 3.5 to 5.0 having a high level of self-compassion. If you look at the graphs that we have here, when we analyze the data, each category, the mean would increase. The mean score, the mean self-compassion score for individuals who went to church or were involved in church 0 to 1 hours per week, the mean score was 2.791 with a standard deviation of 0.358. You'll see that in figure 1. And then figure 2 then shows the individuals who attended church from 2 to 4 hours, and so on and so forth. And we see that the mean increases from 2.791 to 2.984, then 3.016, and then the individuals who spent more than 8 hours a week in church, their mean score was 3.243 with a standard deviation of 0.539. So while our sample size was not large enough for us to determine if there was a significant correlation, we can see that there is a moderate correlation, that the more time you spend in church, or that these individuals spent in church, the higher their self-compassion score was, which means the more time they spent with like-minded people, the more time they spent in what their religious beliefs were, the more lax they were, the more understanding they tend to be within themselves. So for our purposes, we were able to confirm our hypothesis here. What we feel that we could do better is that we were able to fully grasp how people treat themselves. What would be more interesting or more beneficial as a research topic would be how others or outside people then see churchgoers. As I mentioned before, the church affiliation has often pushed people away from church or has hurt the LGBTQ community who have been condemned by churchgoers as just a common standpoint. It would be interesting to see what their thought is on churchgoers and religious individuals. Something to look at in the future. We appreciate your time. Thank you for everything.